So I said that the next project was to put some tall tufts of grass into the corner here where the cornfield is, and also in some other parts of the layout. Here are some of the tufts in action. I mean, in the on the border of the water. I think it actually turned out quite well, and I'll explain. This is going to be a semi-how-to, if I can get it to work right, of how I created these tufts. Different ways to do it. This is the way that I've decided to do it. Oh yeah, and there's some more trees in here now, and in this module, and eventually there will be some bathers on this beach. And this is the parasols that I'm going to put up on the beach. They're actually 1/100th, so they're going to be a little small, but they'll look okay, I think, with some bathers around to give them contact. This is the other waste area where I put the tufts of grass in. They kind of cover up the front part of this area, which had a couple flaws, and I think this is helping it to look a little more realistic. And I had one left over, so it went into the front of this little observation tower that I got going here. This is the product that I used. It's a Busch product. I picked it up in one of my business trips to Europe, and it says, if I can get this in focus, it says Grainfield and Reeds. So obviously what I'm using it for is this is what it looks like when you take it out of the box. It's just a whole bunch of fibers packed very tightly in what is, I guess, a cardboard ring. I mean, it's a cardboard. Yeah, this is the bottom of it, and you can see I've already taken some out, and all the very little out, if you look at it from that point of view, and all that very little turned into all those grass tufts that you can see in the video of the installed in the module and in the photos. Other tools you're going to need include a good pair of scissors, and these are locking tweezers, the type that you can clip and they stay closed, and a scale ruler. So the purpose of the scale ruler is truly to illustrate a point, and I'm going to try and measure just how long these fibers are. So these fibers are 15 scale feet high, which is rather tall, even for tall grass in the height of summer. I guess these things do double duty, so you could use them in O scale. They'd be a little more closer to the correct reality, I guess, in O scale. But if I cut these things in 3, then I'm going to get 3 lengths of 5 feet, and 5 feet is pretty good for tall grass in Canada. So all you do is grab onto a fair chunk, not that to be very big, and then with a sharp tug, an entire piece comes out like that. So now our problem is to cut it into the proper lengths. So here I've got it set up ready to go. I've used the locking tweezers and clipped the top 1/3 roughly. And then what I'm going to do is pick it up with my other hand and cut along the line of the tweezers, and I'll have to cut it and taken off the first 1/3. I'm going to do that off camera because I don't have a tripod and I'm not very good with one hand. So repeating the process again gives me 3 roughly equally sized pieces. I used the locking pliers on the tweezers rather on the last cut as well, because it keeps them a little better under control. Otherwise they fly all over the place. You can see that we have one tuft that's got a lot more integrity because it's still got the glue stuck to the bottom that was used to hold it in the ring, and the other 2 are a little more, shall we say, freeform. There's also a great deal of trash around, and that's not a problem. That's actually going to be very useful. We're going to use these longer fibers. Some of them fell out immediately when we started manipulating the tuft that I pulled out, and those longer fibers are going to allow us to have a little bit of different texture. The mess, of course, is useful to clean up with a brush, and that brush allows me to illustrate another point. After having bought the Busch product, I found a video on YouTube that said you could just use these, the bristles off a cheap brush, and if you look at them pretty close together, they're just about the same effect. So yes, you don't need to go off to Europe and buy Busch products or have them shipped over the mountain. Just go to your local hardware store or big box retailer and buy a cheap paintbrush. As I recall, this paintbrush would have cost me maybe at about $2 at a discount home store. This wonderful Busch product in nice packaging cost me $6 euro, or roughly $10. So I would have been better off if I'd seen that guy's video before I went out and bought this product. The most important tool is a piece of wax paper, which you steal obviously from your kitchen. This wax paper is where we're going to glue down the tufts, and putting it on wax paper means that we don't have to worry about them sticking to the surface of the cutting board. It'll make it a whole lot easier to take that stuff off afterwards. So we're just going to get some glue. This is silicone glue. I'm sure this is the local brand, but I'm sure you can have your own somewhere. And we're going to use it, just going to put 3 good-sized globs in the middle of that piece of wax paper. I saw another video, back to the different videos ideas, another video that used a hot glue gun. Great idea, I think, and if I had a hot glue gun, I'd use it, but I don't. I have silicone glue, so that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to do the easy job first. We're going to pick up the 2 pieces that were stuck, that came from the bottom of the tuft, the main tuft. And we're just going to make sure they're kind of steady and stick them in the middle of the glue. Now these ones, because they still have the glue along the bottom, are nicely standing up by themselves. We're going to find that that's not the case when we get to these more free-formed globs that we've got to do here, especially when we get these extra fibers in. I tried a number of tricks which I thought would work, including a plastic tube, holding them up with the tweezers, all kinds of things, but there's nothing like your fingers, and there's much more sensitivity, and it just works out better. The first thing you got to do is try and sweep these things up together. You get a good chunk. And then we're going to organize them, which takes a long time, so they all have a common bottom. They want the long fibers to coming out the top, shall we say. So this is a two-handed job, and so I'm going to have to do most of this right now. I'm going to have to do it off camera. So I've organized it, and now I've got a tuft that looks like some kind of strange insect, but by the time we get it upright and stuck into the glue, it's going to look like a decent grass tuft. So let's see if we can do this on camera. Here we go. We pick it up, and then just stick it down in there. We're going to hold it. And we're going to have to hold it for actually quite a bit, because you need the glue to set fairly nicely. So we'll let it go, and it's fallen over, so we'll just prop it back up again and kind of keep it propped up while the process of the glue setting. This has got a nice open structure, some tall fibers, even some dark fibers that got mixed in there. That's going to have a nice effect when it gets onto the blade. Now we're going to do that last bit that was still in the fires. Pieces have been falling out all over the place. It's not going to work out too well. So I'm going to try and coax this to fall flat. This one, just as a note, this one's now opened up quite a bit. And that's actually a good effect. Really good effect. This one's a little scrunchy. And so what we're going to try and do is push the fibers down so that they form a flat mat. And we're going to use them, we'll scoop up some of the other ones and stick them on top as well. And that flat bit we're going to use as the base for another tuft. So we make another tuft. Maybe we'll use this kind of well-formed one over here and stick it on top once it all dries. So here I'm illustrating that point. I've taken the tuft that was fairly well formed, pulled it off its glue pad, and stuck it in the middle of this massive fiber, so it'll look like a grass tuft coming up out of either dead fibers or fallen fibers. And every once in a while you just want to get, first off, make sure that it's roughly vertical. Plants don't usually grow very horizontally. And I've kind of tried to open this up a little bit. Those bottom tufts are nicely formed, but that means they don't really look that realistic. They look like they're pieces of fibers cut off something. So a little teasing will open up the center of the structure and make it look a little better. Like I said, this other one is nice and open. Open is more natural as far as I'm concerned. Open and disordered, if you will. More okay, natural. It's now the next day. It's been a full nearly 24 hours since I've glued these in. And they should just peel off very easily. Theoretically, they should just pull off by hand. But I always have my handy hobby knife ready to deal with any fibers that might be difficult. I have a feeling this is not going to work well with one hand, so I'm going to go off camera and start peeling them off, and hopefully with some photos. Okay, cheers. So I got this one started, but as you can see, it ripped the wax paper. This happens. But it's easier to take the wax paper off than it is to take this off the surface of the cutting board. So here we go. Here's one popped off, and it's got this nice little gluing surface from the little bit of glue spread out. Popped right off, as theoretically it's supposed to, and I thought that was going to be the harder one. Interestingly, this one has nicely, by sheer luck, got more fibers out in front than it has at the back, and that means I can put it along a wall. I was kind of thinking about a wall I wanted to put it along, so this is absolutely perfect. It's important to cut off the excess in the direction that you don't want it to stick out, because the fibers are quite stiff and it'll make it a little difficult to put it into place. This other one is not quite a success, but it's not quite a failure either. Not a lot of the fibers stuck. There's a whole lot of mess, extra fibers sticking around here on the ground, on the board and on the wax paper. So it's a little more open than I wanted to be. The shape is nice, but it's a little more open. A little bit going to be a little difficult to see if I put it at the back, but it'll be fine in the place where I want to put it. So that's about all for this time. I hope it was useful. I hope there were some lessons to be learned there. I think that in the grass tufts, especially in the kind of industrial wastelands that we're talking about, or as in the other corner, the scene out in the countryside, it adds a lot of life to the layout. So I'm really glad that the process worked out, and I hope that sharing it with you helps. Next time, I think I'm just going to start thinking about putting all of the module pieces in, even if they don't have the buildings on them, just so I can plan out the buildings better. So that may be our next video, maybe all of the module pieces in place, kind of like laying down the plaster cloth in a traditional scenery method. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, of course, and subscribe would be very nice. There was a lot more views than subscribers last time, and so it'd be nice to some of those other people who liked the video would convert into subscribers. At any rate, until next time, live long and prosper.